Hello, welcome to another edition of the Fifth Quarter. I'm Mike Ciarochi, sports editor of Herald-Standard.com, joined as usual by George Von Benko, memory lane author and radio personality at WMBS Radio. George, smile.
Now, I was at practice today, so there's not much to smile about.
Not much to smile about.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about this Sunday's matchup. The Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the 2-2 Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the 3-1 Tennessee Titans. The Steelers are look like a mash unit, pretty much, George.
Well, there were a lot. I half expected to see you guys wearing walking boots when I came in here today, because Mweldy Moore was in a walking boot, Aaron Smith was in a walking boot. Of
course, Ben
Roethlisberger was in a walking boot. James Harrison had surgery on his orbital bone today.
Yeah.
It looked like a mash unit down there.
Yeah. And you know, the schedule marches on. They're going to play. They'll have 53 guys in uniform. They'll have, what, 46 or 47 of them in uniform, I guess, 45, 46. But you know, as I said, the season marches on. They got a game to play.
Well, I'm sure Tennessee's not going to feel sorry for them.
No, they get no, you get no sympathy, nor do they want any. You know, I mean, they're licking their wounds, literally and figuratively, after a tough loss in Houston. But you know, they still have to put the unis on, get the shoulder pads buckled on, and get ready to play a football game.
Well, and they did do something finally to try and address what's happening on the offensive line. They released Chris Scott, and they re-signed Max Starks. Now, a lot of discussion about that today, and the reasons for it. Obviously, the reasons are they're not happy with what's going on up front. But is this a little bit of a desperation move, because they'd resisted signing Max Starks for a few weeks now? He was actually in Detroit working out when he got the call. He looked pretty good weight-wise, because that was a big concern.
You know, I think that, you know, the longer time, as time marches on, a guy who wants to get back in the league is going to start working on his physique and working on getting back in football playing shape. Of course, he couldn't work out or anything.
No, he has not practiced in 11 weeks. He told me.
11 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, no, 11 months. 11 months.
Yeah,
11 months.
I thought you told me that.
He had not practiced in 11 months. That's a long time to be
is.
away from football-related activities.
Yeah,
and you don't know what's going to happen with that neck. He said it feels fine, but you know, until you start taking some pops, you're not going to know what it's going to be like.
Right. You know, Max is a good guy. We know he's been around here for a while, and he's been very serviceable for them. And you know, he may not play this week, as we discussed.
I doubt that he's going to get in. From what I understand, the plan is, and this tells you how bad Trey Essex played. Jonathan Scott just got healthy. He's back in at tackle. And he didn't have a particularly light-up game against Indianapolis.
No, he didn't.
And he is going to be playing at tackle, and Gilbert is going to be playing at the other tackle, and Bronco Legursky is back, and he's going to be at guard.
Okay. Well, and you know, the guys up front, we know who they are. The guys in the backfield, we're not 100% sure. It doesn't look good for Richard Mendenhall or Mweldy Moore this week, I don't think.
Well, I saw Richard, and he's got the hamstring problem. Weldy looked even worse. He was wearing a walking boot, and he's got an ankle injury, and he wasn't moving too good at all. So, as you intimated to me and the other people, be careful what you wish for, because you're going to get Isaac Redmond.
Here he comes. Here comes Isaac. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to see Isaac with more carries, or the majority of the carries, here comes your wish this Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Well, actually, I'm sort of anxious to see what happens, because as I pointed out after we looked at the stats from the Houston game, it's hard to overlook, even in a short amount of carries, the yards per carry.
Yards per carry, yeah. I mean, he hits a hole quickly, gets through it.
And when you're playing behind the line like that, you're going to need, and as he pointed out today, if the hole's not there, I'm not a guy, he says, I'm going to make a hole.
That's right. Yeah, you just got to fight your way through it, get what you can, fall down, and get up and play the next play.
So it might be, you know, just what the doctor ordered for this line. Now, Ben looks like he's going to play. He was wearing the walking boot. Roethlisberger has the plate in there. So we'll see what happens. You know, I think they've got problems defensively, losing James Harrison.
Yeah. That's the bigger, you know, as when we talked the last time about the Houston game, I think there was more angst, more concern.
We didn't know at that time that it was a broken orbital bone.
Well, no, there was more concern about the quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, and what happened with his foot, whether there was a break in there or not, which thankfully there was not. James Harrison out, by the coach's own words, more than at least a few weeks.
4 to 6 weeks, I was told today. He had the surgery today. Jason Worlds, who would have been in that spot, is also out. He's hurt, which means they're going to move Lawrence Timmons from the inside to the outside, which gives me some trepidations because I don't think he's as good on the outside, particularly in pass coverage, and they're going to have Larry Foote playing at the inside spot, which is okay.
Right, I feel better about the inside spot than the outside at this point, but you never know. Hey, stars have been made under such circumstances. You know, you move a guy from one position to another, and he could become a star at that position.
What is it the Steelers always say? Somebody's got to step up.
Yeah, that's right.
Play.
Yeah, the line is the line.
Yeah, they've got to step up. I also found it extremely interesting that, you know, with the new collective bargaining agreement, you're only allowed to have one practice per week with pads. You're allowed to do it once a year, once a season, I think, two in a week.
Right.
He's decided to do the 2 practices with pads this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. You know, now's when you need more work. You got new people playing new positions. It's kind of training camp part 2, if you will. And if you will, how about that?
Oh, yeah.
Think I'm not listening to the coach?
You're listening. Yeah. Okay. Somebody's got to make some splash plays.
Yeah. But you know, this is it is what it is. Here's another one. But now's when you need the extra practice, and you know, there's nothing in the CBA. I mean, you can't work them 5 hours at each practice, but there's nothing that says the padded practice can only last 2 hours. If you remember training camp, they were a good 2.5, sometimes 3 hours. He could work them 3 hours in consecutive days.
Well, it gets back to what everybody is saying down there, that they need to get back to base. I mean, everybody I talk to is just so disappointed defensively with the way they're tackling.
Yeah, the run defense. I mean, you know, this team has been in the top 3 or the top 5.
I looked that up, and they have not had this porous of a run defense since the year 2000.
Wow.
That's a pretty long stretch of playing outstanding run.
Yes,
but they have not had this porous of run defense since the year 2000.
I'm pretty sure they're ranked 22nd in the league.
22nd in the league in run defense, yeah.
And, you know, surprisingly, I guess on the other end of the spectrum, the pass defense.
Well, that's a two-edged sword, though, because why throw the ball when you're running it?
Exactly. Yeah. Houston didn't seem too worried about putting the ball in the air last week, and I don't expect Tennessee to be lighting up the secondary this week.
Well, this is an interesting matchup in that regard, because once again, this defense is going to have to go up against one of the better offensive lines in football. The Tennessee Titans offensive line is very well thought of. Chris Johnson is a dynamite running back. His numbers do not reflect how good he is, and that's because he was a holdout and missed most of training camp, and he's just getting his legs under him. But he's had success against the Steelers in the past, and they know it. Plus, you've got Matt Hasselbeck, who's a veteran quarterback, who's really managing the offense well. They're doing some good things offensively. They lost Kenny Britt, who's the home run hitter at wide receiver, but you got Nate Washington.
Nate's great.
And it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. On the other side of the ball, some of their numbers are ugly defensively.
Defensively for Tennessee?
Yeah.
Well, you know, we'll see. So it could be a perfect storm for the Steelers. I mean, you know, all things being considered, all things being equal, I look for a much better performance on both sides of the ball from the team this week. You know, Chris Berman from ESPN loves to say no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. You know, be hard-pressed. The Steelers must be a pretty close second in that regard, because they don't have many long losing streaks or considerably, you know, more than a week or two bad stretches of football. A couple of years ago, they
respond to adversity. They always have. That's been a hallmark of this team over the years. I mean, the drawbridge is up and the moat is filled right now. They're ready to go, and they need this. And believe me, they know what is being said about them, both with the fans and in the media. They are acutely aware of it.
Oh yeah. And you know, I as I mentioned, I look for a lot better out of the team this week than what we saw last week. You know, before a game was played, or maybe even after the Ravens game, first game of the year, you know, the team was on a 2-game winning streak. Had they been able to pull it out in Houston last week, regardless of how ugly they played, we might still have been looking at this next 2 games. Tennessee coming up now, and a week later, my memory's slipping me. They've got someone else at home, not a tremendously potent team.
Jacksonville, right?
Jacksonville Jaguars coming to Heinz Field. Yeah. The 2 games after that are that's where you get New England and Baltimore. There's a trip to Arizona in there, then New England and Baltimore.
Arizona's the away game that's coming up too.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That's one of the, because they have a string of home games, but that's the away game.
Yeah. Well, regardless of, needless to say, let me say, I don't think we have to worry about the Steelers looking ahead past their opponent this week because of New England.
In fact, I asked a couple of guys that, and you know, Bryant McFadden and a couple of guys just looked at me and said, "Are you kidding with what's happening?" He says, "We better take care of business on Sunday."
Yeah. And they got to start piling good performances on top of good performances, and then let the chips fall where they may when those supposed better teams come in. You know, they can't overlook anybody. Certainly not a team coming off one of their better offensive performances in the last 3 weeks. You know, Tennessee, no one expected them to be 3-1 opening this season.
Their loss was to Jacksonville, and it was a close game.
Right.
So they could very easily be 4-0.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But they've won some nail biters. They've given up points. You got to have the thing that everybody else was talking about today too, and we've talked about it. They've got to do something about the turnover margin. You're not going to be a good football team with the turnover margin that they've had. They've given up the ball 11 times, and they've forced 1 turnover.
I believe they're last in the league.
They are. They're number 32.
Yeah, that has to change. And, you know, for them, normally you would say, well, that starts on defense, where they create the turnovers. But for this team this year right now, it has to start on offense. They can't give the ball up. They have to possess the ball.
They've got to protect that. They've got to protect that wounded defense a little bit.
Well, a little bit, but you know, I think the onus right now is on the offense. They have to hold the ball. They can't afford any more turnovers.
Well, and that you know is Ben being pressured, and they're giving up a lot of sacks and things like that. But they've done other things too. You know, Mendenhall's had a fumble, and some. They've got to hold on to the football and not put the defense in, with a short field situation. Plus, they've got to keep the defense off the field a little bit. That's where I say protect the defense. They've got to get, you know, they've got to have some long drives of their own.
Yeah, like the 19-play drive last week that Houston opened the game.
And everybody's still talking about that.
Okay, we're running out of time. This is so, you know, wouldn't it be boring if they were 4-0 and everything was peachy keen and all that? We wouldn't have anything to talk about. No, we can't shut either one of us up.
That's true, and that it's certainly good for the talk shows, but it's not good for the people in that locker room or the coaching staff.
No, and the fans will probably have a little more angst, a little more agita than they normally at this time of year.
That being said, I really think that Tennessee comes at a good time for them. This is I look at this Tennessee team, and they have some warts. Yes, they're 3-1, but you know, I keep looking at those defensive numbers, and you know, if the Steelers can get things rolling a little bit offensively, they may be able to do some damage against this team.
Yeah, okay. You're predicting a Steelers win?
I'm predicting a Steelers win. I'm not going to predict how much at this point. I'll take a 1-point win.
Yeah, they all count.
That's right.
You're not looking for style points.
I'm not looking for style points.
Since this is the Mike Tomlin Cliche Festival, we'll throw that in.
Right.
There are no style points in the National Football League. I also like the Steelers to win this week. More importantly, because they're home, or more just because they're at home. I think more so than anything else. 3 of their first 4 games on the road. They're going to be at home this week. And they're a wounded dog, and I think I like them to pull this one out. So that'll do it for this week. Appreciate you tuning in, and George and I will see you next time.